Hello and welcome to Build Back Liberal. This time I'm joined by Josh Babarinde, who has recently became Josh Babarinde OBE. Hello, Josh.
Hello, Ryan. Thank you so much.
Um, so, for those who aren't familiar with you and your work, can you tell us a bit about yourself?
Of course, I am an Eastbourne boy, born and bred from the Sunshine Coast, and I'm a social entrepreneur. So, having grown up in Eastbourne, went to London, worked with young ex-offenders and young people at risk of gang involvement. Indeed, some of them gang involved, and worked with them to try to find a way, an intervention that would support them move away from crime and towards employment. Many felt backed into crime's corner. So I built with them, Cracked It, London's social enterprise smartphone repair service, staffed by young ex-offenders and young people at risk of offending, where we would run pop-up repair shops in large workplaces across the capital, whether it's the US Embassy or the Ministry of Justice or River Islands headquarters, Deutsche Bank. The list goes on, and our young people were servicing those 29% of unlucky or clumsy individuals who had a smashed smartphone screen. But big challenges during the lockdown, when lots of those skyscrapers, indeed all of them that we'd served, are no longer open. So we've embarked on lots of twists, turns, and pivots, which are culminating in us seeding some brand new projects as an organisation, implanting them into other organizations that are mission aligned. And then we ourselves, with a business model that's been undermined, will dissolve, but see the legacy of our work live on in those other organizations. So that's a bit about me and my work. And into the future, I guess, a lot of my work I want to translate from being a practitioner as an entrepreneur into being an educator. And I'll be taking on a new role as an educator of entrepreneurship, as opposed to as a practitioner, as well as being able to invest myself and the stuff I've learned throughout my career in my wonderful hometown of Eastbourne.
As well as your social entrepreneur work, you were a Liberal Democrat candidate at the last general election, and I think though you weren't in a target seat yourself, I think you played quite a high profile role as in the party, speaking at a number of events I saw. Do you want to talk a little bit about your experiences there as well?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, a huge part of my life for 11 years, in fact, has been as a Liberal Democrat member. And I had the privilege of being a parliamentary candidate, as you say, Ryan, at the 2019 general election, selected in Bethnal Green and Bow, which is in the borough of Tower Hamlets, where Cracked It, my social enterprise, um, is based. And yeah, what an extraordinary privilege and a great campaign, being able to work with great people across East London and indeed beyond to double the Liberal Democrat vote share in the constituency, to increase the Lib Dem vote share by more than any other party did, by jumping from fourth to third place and securing a 3% swing away from the Conservatives and towards us. It was really exciting. And in terms of the role I played, I guess, beyond Bethnal Green and Bow, and as an ambassador for the party, it was very much a case of me just saying yes to lots of people, and you know what people commented on in terms of my candidacy and my role is that they liked the fact that I was a bit different, I guess, as a candidate. I'm not what a typical Liberal Democrat candidate might look like. And I think, yeah, the party wanted to celebrate that, and I was happy to celebrate that with them. So whether it was by speaking at the launch of our party election broadcast, I think it was the biggest rally that the party held in advance of the general election, or whether it's having a leaders visit in Bethnal Green and Bow, which was great as well. Just an extraordinary campaign, and great to do that at the same time as kind of piling my efforts into trying to save Eastbourne as one of our Liberal Democrat seats as well, and bringing some volunteers from London down to support the legend, the man, the myth, the legend that is Stephen Lloyd. Unfortunately, we weren't successful, but we put up a good fight. And then another role I play in the party, and just as passionately indeed as I have as a candidate, is as a vice chair of the Racial Diversity Campaign, which is the party's drive to support outstanding members of colour to seek and win election to public office. I've been in post for a matter of months, and there is lots of work to do. It's no secret to any Liberal Democrat that there's a big journey to go on. The party's been on, or is on, a big journey of diversity and inclusion, especially when it comes to race. But we have never, Ryan, ever elected an MP, for example, of black heritage in our history, whether that's as the Liberal Democrats, whether that's as the Liberal Party, indeed, whether it's trying to accommodate some of the history of the Whig Party as well. Never in 400 years or thereabouts have we been able to make that happen. And in light of a lot of the events of this year, really kind of shedding light on the challenges that black communities face, and the importance of involving black communities in the Build Back Better and the Build Back Liberal conversations. I think we, as a party and as the Racial Diversity Campaign, have got a big piece of work to do on that front. And I'm delighted to be helping to spearhead it.
So, earlier this year, you were one of the contributors to Build Back Better, the publication that has inspired this series. How did you first come to be involved in that?
I first came to be involved in Build Back Better through a rant. So I was going to sleep one night, or I was just about to go to sleep, and I saw that, well, I recognised an absence in what I perceived to be a kind of liberal economic policy when it came to getting the economy back on its feet. There was lots of survival stuff, lots of very interventionist survival stuff in the form of the kind of furloughing scheme, which was absolutely necessary, and credit where credit's due to Rishi Sunak for that. But I wasn't seeing kind of the seeds of recovery, and I thought that that needed to be a priority from the get-go, not just from when we think we're exiting the survival stage. And so I was ranting to Stephen Lloyd, former MP for Eastbourne, via WhatsApp, and said, why isn't this happening? And I can't believe I haven't heard about this or that. And I just threw some ideas. And he said, mate, write about it. I was like, well, where? And then he kind of said that he'd heard that Layla was pulling something together and introduced me to her. I then pitched this idea to her and had a bit of a rant again. And I said, yeah, fine, I'll go away and kind of put some meat on the bones of this idea. And lo and behold, it was featured as part of Build Back Better, which is really exciting. And I think that's kind of a real testament to the grassrootsness of our party. This just started off as a WhatsApp rant and ended up, in a publication spearheaded by a Lib Dem leadership candidate, and has, been read and discussed and commented on across the party. And I think that's really cool that a member like me can get involved in something like that.
So can you tell us sort of what your section of the publication is specifically about? Like, what were you trying to get across?
Yeah. So my section was published in the chapter on economic policy, and my specific piece was on a very kind of practical economic recovery instrument that I think the government should apply or kind of ratchet up. And I call this instrument recovery rewards. And they're modeled on actually quite a traditional concept, prize inducement contests or challenge prizes. And in simple terms, there's not a huge amount to it. It essentially involves creating a prize fund and setting particular challenges for that prize fund. For example, a challenge might be, how do we adapt homes so that they're suitable for home working? And you attach maybe £1 million prize to the organisation or individual who creates the best solution to that challenge that's been set. But of course, they only get that prize once they invent the solution. And so it serves as an incentive for talent to mobilize around whatever issue has been defined as the prize, a lightning rod for innovation. And I was and still am particularly passionate about this as a recovery tool, because COVID has unveiled to us or highlighted in greater detail some of the problems that existed with our economy before, and indeed has created new problems that need to be solved. And my concern is that if we don't start to tackle these now, things will slip back to normal, the problems will become further entrenched, and some of the most vulnerable people in our society will carry on getting trod on, and that's not fair, and there's a missed opportunity. So I argue in Build Back Better, in my piece, for recovery awards with a prize fund set to challenge innovators to solve particular social challenges, which might be, how do we support the tourism industry of seaside towns to thrive post-COVID? Go.
I mean, I really like this idea, in that we, as liberals, we are not rejectors of capitalism. We do see that there is a place for the market, and the question is how you can harness that to achieve a social end. Because I mean, we can talk more about this in a bit. Capitalism is very, very good at making money. It's very good at creating wealth and generating wealth. It's not very good at getting wealth where it's needed. It's not very good at tackling complex problems. It's good at simple things, about making things more efficient, making the most of certain things. And I think the methods like this, which actually I understand why you of all people think come up with this because of your involvement with social enterprises, about looking at creative ways we can make capitalism work for people. I think is really should be really central to a Liberal Democrat economic message. So, with that in mind, obviously your section is within the wider chapter on sort of economic fairness. What do you think are the things that the Liberal Democrats should be doing more of around how we can build that sort of fairer economy?
Yeah, great question. And I want to pick up on, before I answer that, something that you just said, which is around harnessing the market for decent ends. I mean, this is what I have devoted the last however many years of my career to doing as a social entrepreneur. You're absolutely right. In my case, trying to harness the phone repair market is worth about £2 billion a year, and channeling that cash into criminal justice and rehabilitation, and youth employment, which is, well, to my knowledge, has never been done before with that market. But it shouldn't be incumbent on kind of people with crazy ideas like me to try to do that. That's not a scalable solution. Instead, I think a quintessentially liberal way of being able to achieve positive social impact is through something like a recovery reward that doesn't require huge intervention on the part of the state, but instead the state can play the role as an enabler by providing this incentive to mobilize economic actors around the social issue, with society ultimately benefiting from it. I think it's just a really balanced partnership that speaks to liberalism. And I think as a party, but also as a cause, we're in real need of some distinct ideas and policies that help carve out that niche for us. Now, in terms of your question, what should we as liberals be advocating in order to kind of build a fairer economy? Well, one, I think we need to be looking for growth. We need an economy first to exist in as great a form as possible, so that we have more pie to distribute to different people. And I think a mistake in large part that we made in 2010 was being too seduced by the austerity agenda. And what we learned is that sure, you can balance budgets, which is really important. I'm not an economist, but I do understand that that is very important. But as a non-economist also, it just seems common sense that if you don't invest in your economy, then it won't grow. And if you cut, then you will choke off growth. And then there is less pie for everybody. And I'm afraid that's what happened, and we haven't quite recovered. So I get the pragmatism, but I also think we need boldness to challenge those kind of prevailing orthodoxies, of which austerity was one. In terms of kind of other measures to build that fairer economy, I believe quite passionately, and I think, Ryan, we may have even spoken about this a year or so ago. I believe passionately that we need to work more on taxing wealth. I don't think we do that enough in our country. And I think that we have been scared about kind of opening the can of worms that entails.
The way I like to think of this is that the driving force of capitalism isn't gravity. Money doesn't trickle down, it sticks together. It's sort of magnetism. And the role of government is, if it wants to use capitalism and markets to generate wealth, to have more pie to share around, it does have to then pull apart some of that sticky money. It has to look at tackling monopolies. And I think you're absolutely right. Wealth taxation is the way to go in terms of stopping this accumulation of more and more money in the hands of a very smaller and smaller groups of people. Not because they are working harder, not because they're coming up with new and innovative ideas, but because they have the money in the first place, and money attracts more money, whether that's as large-scale landlords be able to invest, working in the property set market, or as we've seen, I think, in the growth of this billionaire class, where you have people who are extraordinarily wealthy, and their wealth is constantly, the money is working rather than them necessarily at attracting and generating more investment wealth. And when the economy is working smoothly, when markets are working effectively, actually money should be more spread out. And where there is money available for small businesses to thrive, for individuals to be able to improve their homes and build themselves a better life and a better future. And I think our economy isn't quite lending itself to that. And wealth taxation, as well as the Lib Dem liberal article of faith land value tax, these kinds of measures are the way to start breaking that sticky money and start getting wealth where it needs to be for a really effective market and a really effective and fair economy.
Yeah, I would agree with every word, and I think that well, the point that I was going to move on to next kind of flows quite nicely onto that. There's a great organisation called Extend Ventures. They're quite a new organisation, and they've been doing a lot of research into where venture capital investment goes. And I mean, the outcome of their report won't be of any huge surprise to anyone, but maybe the extent of what they found is. And basically, there very, very little VC cash goes to diverse founders, diverse entrepreneurs who have great ideas but don't have access or don't have the networks that help them access those wealth balls, if you like, that you've spoken about, that sticky wealth. And for as long as those kind of founders, those kind of entrepreneurs, those kind of innovators are locked out of that kind of cash and those kind of opportunities to see their ideas touch lots of other people across the country and across the world, for as long as that happens, we'll be a poorer country, and we won't be the kind of inclusive haven that we as Great Britain like to kind of sell ourselves as. So I think it's critical that we work to support diverse entrepreneurship and not just ideas that come from the same places. No group of people have a monopoly over great innovations.
In this series, I've been asking each person I interview for one thought or idea that they have about the US election, because it seems rather strange to ignore this massive event that's happened, but also we don't want to go too far down that road. It is currently the 20th of November, so we're at a point where Trump's objections to the result simply look ridiculous, but he hasn't as yet conceded. But do you have any thoughts about the election and what we could be learning from it?
Uh, I have many thoughts. Um, I think my key one would be not just about the election, but actually about Trump's presidency and indeed his first campaign back in 2016. Um, and that is um, a point around patriotism. Um, I think we, as liberals and as Liberal Democrats, have a lot to learn about patriotism. Um, we, as a party, I feel, are a bit embarrassed about embracing that concept. I think it's seen as um, toxic. It's seen as narrow, and it's confused with nationalism. So we don't touch it with a barge pole. Um, and I think that something that we have seen from Trump is that he's kind of harnessed a lot of America's kind of frustration, if you like, that their country hadn't been celebrated in the way that many people thought it should. Um, he was able to harness a kind of national pride. I mean, he went too far on the nationalism, but he was able to kind of harness this spirit in people to, well, mobilize them to vote for him to unexpectedly win the presidential election. And I think we often laugh at, the rednecks for the number of kind of US flags that they have outside their home and the number of guns that they have and the extent to which they just adore the US military, in much the same way that Emily Thornberry mocked the house up north with, when it wasn't up north, it was in Rochester, I think, that had a white van outside and the St. George's flags. And I think we need to make sure that we never get into that place. And I'm afraid that we are not too far from it. And we need to accept that national pride can be a great thing, patriotism can be a great thing. And the liberal manifestation of patriotism, in my view, is something like the national response to the opening of the 2012 Olympic Games. That was a healthy pride in everything that is British. Clapping for the NHS during the first lockdown, I think, kind of inherited a similar vibe. And we, as liberals, need to make sure that the nationalist right don't own national pride. We've let them do that for too long, and we need to take that back.
Speaking of pride, before we finish, I think why the first my first Josh Babarinde encounter was this rally at the 2019 general election, and this big rally that Joe Swinson was going to be speaking at, and they made this announcement that and now for the next speaker will be Josh Babarinde. So my initial reaction was, who the bloody hell is he? And you gave one of the most passionate, and this is something our party is not very good at, actually, is expressing real emotion and passion when we talk about our beliefs and our values. And that really struck a chord with me, and I had to meet you. And I think and I hope that you'll carry on having that, bringing that energy to what the party does as we go forward, because it really left an impression on me at the time. And I'm very pleased that you're still involved with what's happening in the party, including contributing to things like this. So thank you so very much for joining me with this.
Thank you, Ryan. And that is really touching. And I was absolutely bricking it on that stage. And I'm just so chuffed that it had an impact. So no, it's been a pleasure. Really great to join you. Thank you for putting on this series. I think a lot of people in the party right now are looking in the different nooks and crannies that we have for different bits of inspiration and things that they can get stuck into to really help take our party forward that has been in the doldrums for some time. And I think that your work, not just the kind of content of all these different podcasts that you're making, but critically your convening of them, I hope will inspire people to get stuck into the party in their own ways as well. So thank you for everything that you're doing.
Thank you for listening to Build Back Liberal. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and look at some of the other interviews I've had with people around a whole range of topics, including things like UBI, immigration, and the various things we need to do to change our party. Take care and stay safe.